Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Larry Johnson, your host for Principal's Voices, or A Principal's Voices, and I'm delighted to have Barbra Carlisle with me today. Carlisle with me. I didn't get that right. Barbra Carlisle. La, la, la.
That's good.
And
That's good.
she is the founder and principal of Glee Coaching. Now, that name alone makes me want to find out more. So, first, welcome, Barbra.
Thank you, Larry. Thanks for having me on. It's
You're
a
more
pleasure to be here.
Well, and I will imagine that my mostly American audience will recognize immediately that we're talking with someone who's across the pond today, and but I've known Barbra through two other coaches that I use, and I found her to be outstanding and excellent. And I wanted her to give an opportunity to share a couple of things, a little bit about her, but also about the way she approaches her work. So, Barbra, how long have you been in the coaching business, the leadership coaching business?
Well, being in the leadership business for a considerable amount of time, whether it's through direct leading or influencing other leaders, and then in the coaching space, probably coming up to 4 or 5 years.
Okay. Well, I always ask this of people who are now in the what I call the para fundraising or para leadership space, like I'm in. You know, you move from being like the frontline leader to being a coach of leaders. What facilitated that change? What was the impetus for that?
And I think the opportunities just come up, don't they? And you think you're really enjoying one job. So my first leadership role was around, I was a researcher doing social value research, and I had the opportunity to lead a team. And part of me was like, oh, no, I really love research, so why bother leading anybody? I just want to be in the thick of it. I was encouraged to apply, got the job, and then absolutely loved working with a high performing team. They were all PhD and master's graduates with a real passion for social equity, and they challenged my thinking, but it actually brought out the real people side of me, whereas before I'd brought out the people side of me in the work, in the research that I'd done. So I realized the importance of and unfortunately that role became redundant, so I had to guide the team through redundancy. So you grew in that role, and there was a lot of client engagement, so I actually quite liked leading the team and being the one responsible for reporting back to the client on how the team's research was coming along.
So,
That's how I felt. Well, I wouldn't say I fell into it. That's how I evolved.
okay. All right.
Leadership.
So, this leadership is a very au courant subject these days, just about everywhere. Either talking about what it is, what it's not, bemoaning the lack of it, all kinds of various things. Uh, if you could identify one or two attributes of an individual that would make for an effective leader of other people, what would that be? What would they be?
Or on the spot, I would say it's the desire to support, to get the best out of people. So that innate, people often say that people pleasers, it's a real curse because you end up doing, stuff for others and never looking at yourself. But I think to be a great leader, you have to be a people person. You have to want to know how to get the best out of people so that they can, help you raise the funds, get the money for the business. And I think there's got to be a curiosity about the art of the potential and the art of the possible, and not to just see people's veneer. They come to work, I'm the finance director, therefore I do finance. It doesn't mean that that's their passion. So it's that curiosity to get behind the facade that people come to work with.
Oh, I like that. First of all, you have to like people. And,
You do.
and that means you can't sit in the corner and hope they go away. Uh, and you have to be curious. And that's a very good quality, curious, which means you're not satisfied with just what you see. Um, you're kind of looking around and figuring out what else is there. I like that very, very
Mm.
much.
But it's really important, Larry. The most important thing in that, what you just said, is uh, talking. Never assume what somebody's passion is. Communicate with them. because that is, I think communication is an underrated leadership skill, that ability to connect with others, and show genuine interest. Because
So
so many leaders don't really, well, not so many, but I've come across quite a few leaders who haven't actually got a genuine interest in the people around them. They see them more as like task bunnies.
mhm. Well, and I would think that unless there's a genuine interest there, that's not easy to cultivate. That's personality. Yeah,
Yeah, and if you don't have a natural preference for people, then as a leader, the thing to do is to get one or two comrades around you in the leadership team who do have a natural affinity with the people connection, so that you don't have to. Because if you're not a natural people person, but you find yourself in a leadership position, you don't want to be using all your energy trying to be nice to people. The thing is to gather people around you who love being nice to people and let them do the hard lifting, because they won't see it as hard lifting. So
yeah.
it's about that shared, and I think they call it collaborative leadership, don't they? Where you're all in it together, you're a team, and you divide and conquer by using your strengths.
So let's assume for the moment that I'm curious and that I like people. All right. And I've come to you looking for help. Um, is it possible to take those two qualities and make me an effective leader? And I'm willing to do what you tell me. So I come to you willingly, and I'm curious, and I do like people, and I'm in
Yeah,
this very demanding leadership role that I've been thrust into, and it's new to me. Maybe it's my first, what we would call in the business, line management position, you know,
yeah,
where, because, you can be in management and be a matrix manager. You're not really responsible for people. It's just a title and a salary. But if it's a line management and I've been thrust into that, and I have those qualities, how would you approach me as a client? What would like give it up, Larry, get another job, or what would you do?
well, if you're saying that you like people and you're willing and you're curious, I think that's a combination that you need. I think the point that you've made that's really, really important here is you've got to be ready to want to be a leader. You've got to be ready to want coaching, because if you're not ready, then your mind's closed. If you're not ready to be a leader, and I think it's the reasons why you want that leadership role, whether it's first line manager role or an executive leadership role, it's got to be your choice, not what somebody said to you should do, and you thought, oh, well, I'll do it because it's the only way up in this business.
Hmm.
So I think that curiosity and an openness to be vulnerable is what executive coaching brings. It allows you to say, well, actually, I like people, but I only like them sort of at the end of the day when I've done all my tasks. Or I like people, but I only want to communicate with them through email. So it's like, well, how can you be an effective leader and play to your strengths rather than be everything to everybody? So I don't, and because all the coaching I do and all the training I do, I call it like applied. So it's about learning something about yourself, so self-awareness, but then taking actions on the back of either the formal training or the coaching, and being accountable to somebody like myself to come back and say, I tried it, didn't work, tried it, liked it. But it's that vulnerability that you have to sit with, to say, well, why do I feel like this? What isn't working for me? What am I not good at? And it might be things like you might not think that you're good at time management. You might not think that you're good at having a difficult conversation with somebody, especially if you are in a new line management position where you previously were in the team. So you suddenly find yourself managing your mates, or at a minimum your old team members. So there's all that like relational dynamics that comes into play that you have to try and navigate. And that's where the benefit of having a coach, a sounding board, or a mentor, and the two are quite different, can really help you feel that you can get the most out of yourself, out of your team, and out of the job without getting too stressed or
Okay.
overwhelmed.
That's a couple of things I want to ask you, but you said something there at the end. How would you define the difference between a coach and a mentor?
The official, well, there's not really an official definition, but my official
All right,
definition
we're talking to
is
you, Barbara.
a mentor is typically somebody who has more experience than the person they're mentoring and has some degree of experience in the sector or field or function that the person they're mentoring is sitting in. So they come with business knowledge and business experience. And the key for me difference is that mentors advise. So they will guide the mentee and say, well, you could do it like this, or you could do it like that. I did it like this and this happened. I recommend that you do this. Whereas a coach is principally, a pure coach is non-directive. They're there to stimulate your thinking, to challenge you. It's both mentor and coach challenge, but a coach will challenge for self-awareness. And through self-awareness, once you become aware of your blockers, your ambitions, your limiting factors, or what you perceive to be limiting factors, you then have a choice as to what you do with them. And then from that comes action. And I firmly believe that if I told you, Larry, to write 14 blogs by the end of the month, you'd say, yes, miss, but where's the motivation? Whereas if you talk to me as a coach, and then you said, you know what, I'd really like to do, I think if I wrote 4 blogs a week, that would be brilliant. So you've decided to write 4 blogs, not me. And all I do the next time we meet is to say, how did the blog writing go? And you said, well, I did 2 out of the 3. And then we unpack, well, was it not reasonable for us to suggest that you could do 4? So coaching is non-directive in principle, but you come out with as many actions, but the self-owned actions. And I think that's where the fundamental benefit of coaching versus mentoring is.
That's fascinating. I'd never looked at it quite that way because I've had the opportunity to have a number of mentors. Um, in my career, I worked with in my direct fundraising career, I worked with high net individuals, and these people were very successful in their own right. And many of them were successful business people or built enterprises. And I still remember a piece of advice that an individual gave me. And he was the CEO of a Fortune 100 firm, uh, old enough to be my dad, by the way, just FYI. And I had gotten my first vice presidency, and I was going to have to go in and make some changes. And he said to me, let me give you a little advice, Larry. Now, this guy was in the corporate community. He said, whatever you're going to do it fast. You've got about 6 months where you can do just about anything except murder someone. Okay. And you can get away with it. But you go beyond 6 months and the cement starts to set. And then the political cost of making those changes becomes too great. And that was good advice. I mean, I didn't get a report card out of him, but the point is that was good advice. But that was a mentor relationship, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and mentors I do mentoring as well with small medium enterprises in the UK over here, and it is a blend. But I will always say to my clients, we can do whatever you want to do, but can we start with coaching? Because until you get stuck, totally stuck, then we'll start to veer off perhaps. And as the relationship evolves, you sort of know the balance to hold within the sessions that you have with people. But there's, as a CEO, a lot of corporates have both a coach and a mentor,
Yes.
and probably several coaches for different things. So I think there's a place and space for both. My preference is for coaching because I feel it's more empowering for the individual.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, radical thing to say, maybe. Who knows? But that's my that's my personal preference.
Okay. Um, Let me describe a situation for you and see how you would want to deal with this. You've been you got a new client. They are a like what mid-level executive, and they really think of themselves pretty highly. Now, when I say that, I don't mean, oh, look at me, I'm just Mr. Wonderful, okay, here, but that they think, well, I've got it pretty well figured out. I'm a kind person, and yeah, I'm demanding, and I want to get it done, but we all do, and so I'm just in there mixing it up, and yeah, my people like me, and what. But then you do your research, and you find out that's not the story. All right, that although this man is thinking he's giving and open and wonderful, but he's not coming across that way. And it's going to be quite an adjustment when he finds that out. So, how would you go about, like first of all, I presume you've identified this through some sort of 360 evaluation or something, okay? But beyond that, how do you approach your client when it's going to be such a jolt?
Well, I'm very much into like positive psychology. So you don't go in and tell somebody that they're not as good as they think they are.
Well, that's not the way
Yeah.
to start. I wouldn't advise starting that way. Yeah, that's the reason I asked you the question.
But it's about exploring what they spending a bit of time and say like the 360, then it's not happened, but you've got feedback that they're not really doing the job that they're there to do, or as well as their bosses anticipated, or their bosses anticipated. Then it's about spending time on finding where they are in terms of their awareness of their lead. I always start with what are your strengths? How does that play out? When does being task orientated work really well? When's it perhaps not worked so well for you and your team? And so just slowly nudging them, and it can be done in an hour or over a couple of sessions, nudging them to realization that actually their leadership styles. So, for example, it might be that they're a bit of a pace setter. So they're high performing, they expect the team to be high performing, they prioritize work above everything else. So they're prepared to stay late and they can produce work really quickly. But to keep that up over many months, many years, for their team is a disaster. For him or her, it might be fine. That's where they might get their energy, but they've got to look at where their team's energy comes from, and say, right, okay, so my pace setting style is brilliant in this and this circumstance, but in this environment, it's not going to work, and staff are going to leave. And then if you're struggling with awareness, then you do bring in things like findings from the employee engagement survey that perhaps the business does, and ask them for an opinion on why do you think that the employees have the perception that the leadership team aren't fit to lead the business into the future strategy. And they say, well, it's nothing to do with me. So you just try and slowly to unpick, and then you bring in the 360 evidence. And I would always say start with asking them first. The best managers I've had when I've gone to a performance development review is, they've asked me, well, what do you think's gone well? Where do you think you could have improved? So it's giving the voice to the person who's on the other end of it and wanting to help them to become aware of both the strengths and areas of development.
Um, self-awareness is not easy to get sometimes. Oh yeah, she's
Oh yeah, and I'm talking about myself here.
to be
Constant learning journey, constant learning journey.
but to be self-aware, and I would think that is something that for when you see a person who's really an outstanding leader, I would think that self-awareness goes hand in hand with that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they often say that the best leaders are the most emotionally intelligent leaders. And to be emotionally intelligent, an element of that is self-awareness and the ability to regulate self, and to be able to recognize how you present to other people, as well as how other people are perceiving you. So it is to be self-aware. You do also need to have time to reflect back. If you're like a bull in a china shop every day, going forward, you've not got time for self-awareness because you're on the track of do.
Mm-hmm.
So you do need to pack in your busy day some time to actually reflect on how you've performed as a leader, or whatever element of leadership you're interested in that day. And that is a massive struggle for most people. And that's why the mindfulness business is absolutely booming, because of buy a journal, write your thoughts down. There's a vision and manifesting. They're all really good ways to stop and think.
Okay. Uh, as I look back upon people that I've worked with, and then in my own career, um, I'm, and see if there, if this has been, if this is, if I'm looking for a validation here, if this makes sense. Oftentimes, the people who are middle in the middle are the ones in the organization have the hardest time achieving balance and having that view. And then
Mm,
the people at the senior executive level are the ones who have this sense of awareness and understanding and intelligence. And is it because, is that how they got there? Did they, is that because they had it originally? Is it something, I'm just curious, because I'm just thinking of
mm,
people that I'd met. And as I said, when I was a frontline fundraiser, I worked with some really, really high level executives, and they were very, very busy people. And yet, when I was with them, I felt like I was their number one concern right then,
mm,
and I never felt rushed. Or, of course, I mean, and I'm thinking of one person in particular who managed his time extremely well. And this was 25 years ago, when doing a lot of international travel over and over wasn't what you did in a company. And all of his C officers, Barbara, were virtual. None of them were
mm.
located in this Palo Alto headquarters. And I'm thinking, and that was like radical. They didn't have Zoom then. And then thinking, what are we doing? And but this man was just focused on me when I was there. And it was just, and you watched how he interacted with other people in the office, and there was always a respect and cordiality with everyone, no matter who they
Mm.
were in the office, and whether it was somebody sweeping the floor or somebody else. I mean, there wasn't. So that's the quality of the person. But I'm thinking, is that the reason they got there, or is it because they kind of grew into it over time, or is it some of both? I,
I think it's a really complex answer, to be honest, because there are people who've got a natural um, talent, a natural innate ability to connect with other humans. Thankfully, we've got those types of people in the world that are just really natural. You can grow your curiosity. You can be trained. You can learn about. I think when you learn about yourself um, and learn about communication, I think that helps you to then again be curious and empathetic towards other people. Now, I think when you talk about the middle managers who perhaps don't display those competencies, we're talking about you have to think about the system that they're in. They're in a system with a line manager in particular is a task orientated. Well, they have to be doing the work of the bosses. They have to get deliverables out. So they're more likely to have very stringent times, um, targets. The people below them will need more support. So I think sometimes middle managers, well, I do believe middle managers get a really raw deal because they don't necessarily get the time to think about themselves. So they might have self-limiting beliefs, for example. So if you're a line manager and you've been in post for 6 years, you may well be emotionally intelligent, but your confidence may have dropped because you're thinking, well, this is the only job I can do. Nobody really, so you then put all these things on yourself to stop yourself from excelling. And the other really important factor in terms of like progression, and I do this quite a lot in the uh, STEM world, science, technology, engineering, and maths sort of training that I do, is around image and exposure. So you can be really highly emotionally intelligent, you can be fantastic at performing your job, but if you're not exposed to new opportunities and you don't really have an image within the organization, as in you're not connected with anybody, you say very little, then you're not as likely to get promoted. So, sadly, it is about who you know and how you come across. You need to do the basics, but actually, no amount of emotional intelligence is going to get you to the top unless you've got these other opportunities that come along. So I think it's really difficult, to be honest, when you're a middle manager because you're so consumed with targets and doing the do.
okay. Um, I'm sure you're familiar with the name Stephen Covey. or
Yeah.
7 Habits. Well, full disclosure, when I was at State University of New York, they sent me to Covey School and to become a Covey facilitator. And Covey's big thing is he says there are two primary variables. There's competence and there's character. And
Yeah.
you have to have both to be effective. I mean, you want to respond to that?
Um, well, I think you need, when you're a CEO, you, the things you need competency in are significantly different to when you started out as a grad on the grad program. Because when you're a grad, a graduate, you wanting to display competencies that you've learned through the education system. You want to be able to be technical. If you're an architect, you want to be able to do the technical drawing. When you're a leader, that those competencies, yeah, still useful, but they're not going to make or break your career as a CEO. Your visionary competencies and your ability to, your competency to negotiate, your competency to the softer side of living life as a CEO, those softer skills, you need to grow your competency in that, or else you'll rub everybody's backs up and your major donors will fly. But you've got to develop different competencies. And then in terms of character, we all know people who we gravitate towards, who we like to be around, even in our own friendship groups. I've got a fantastic friend, but I find that spending time with them, they drain my energy. Still like the person, but they do so from a character perspective, that person drains my energy. Whereas other friends, I just want to spend all my time with because they fill me with energy. And I think that's what CEOs are aiming to do, is to fill the people around them with energy to go off and do fantastic things for the business. Because it's all about, at the end of the day, it's about motivation. If you go into work and you're not motivated by your line manager, by your job, by the leaders, then you're not going to stay there very long. Or if you do, you're just going to cause more trouble than if you left, because the quality of your work will be poor. So I think character is fundamental. If you look at some of the big characters in the world, Richard Branson, he's a character, and actually he's a total people person. He knows all the sort of lower grade staff, takes the time to thank everybody. So it's that personal connection that sees him successful and many others around him.
Well, and I would include in character truth telling, um, um, doing what you say you will do, being and something that I find in lesser managers, and I see it all the time, Barbara, is men and women who will sandbag their staff. Do you know what the term sandbag means? Well, in other words, you go into a meeting and your staff has done something that they shouldn't have, or and you go in and, well, it was Jill's fault, it was Bill's fault, sandbagging the staff.
Yeah, the blame game. Yeah.
Instead of taking the responsibility, yeah, okay, I'm the leader, I take full responsibility of this. Instead, I take the responsibility. See, to me, that's a hallmark of leadership, is that you're not going to sandbag somebody else. You're going to take the responsibility, because what's the saying? That's why you get paid the big bucks, is because you take responsibility for it, is what you're doing.
Yeah, and I actually thought you were going to say the other thing that managers sometimes do, or even teammates, is take the credit where the credit isn't due.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you've done the legwork and you've done a really great piece of work, and your boss says, "Oh, thanks." They may say thanks to you in a quiet, darkened room, but then when they go into a public setting, they claim it as their own. And I've been in situations where the praise has gone towards the manager. I'm like, but I did all the work. And okay, yeah, they're the manager, but I don't think there's any harm, and there isn't any harm, I can tell you now, in recognizing the people who have helped you with a piece of work that you're presenting. And if you're going to just take all the glory for yourself, that's like short-termism as far as I'm concerned.
Well, this happened to me once. I'm sitting in this college board meeting, and I had been able to secure a very, very large gift for the institution. In fact, the largest ever. And everybody kind of knew who was responsible for it. But we get in there, and I'm against the wall. I'm not at the table, and my associate vice president is next to me. The president begins telling this story about how this gift came to be, and my AVP leans over and puts in my ear and says, "What kind of fiction is he talking over there?" It was totally fiction. It's like, but I didn't speak up and say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" No, but yes, yeah, he just wanted to bask in the limelight. It was all about
Mm,
him and everything. I'm going because yeah, because my friend said, "What kind of fiction is that? That is not
yeah.
real." And so,
But that's where you want people to stand up in the moment and speak up, and you know you can do it. And this is the sign. I think this is a great sign of leadership: is that ability to speak the truth. You know, so in that situation, it's like, oh, hold on, I thought it was Larry that did that piece of work. You know, you're not saying that you disagree, you're just questioning. And I think that, you know, that's part of what I'd call the bigger picture of allyship, is helping people to be empowered in the moment. And if you are in a position to speak up, speak up.
yes, it's kind of tough when you're in that particular situation. I couldn't do it myself at that time, or else I'd be seen as being a bit insubordinate. So anyway, so
Mhm.
uh, so you've been in the business here, what, 3 or 4 years, 5 years? Is that okay?
Yeah, I've been doing coaching for 4 or 5, my business for 2.
So where do you want to go from here, Barbara? What kind of, what's your dream client?
Well, I've got a dream life as well as a dream as a dream client, because for me
Okay.
it's about the balance, the future balance, to
All right.
enjoy every aspect of my life that I want to do, and to grow old very gracefully, sort of. So with clients, I always want to work with people who are wanting to get more out of themselves and wanting to know how to be the best leader they can be, to try and help them to get rid of any anxieties, get rid of any sort of self-limiting beliefs, around, I don't think this is the right role for me. I don't like to have those conversations. I'll just do it myself. So empowering people who are particularly new in role. And then it's great working with teams where you can see the change within the team itself. So around team communication and helping people to understand how they communicate can have a massive impact on the people around them, even peers at executive level. Um, and I did something with a group recently where I asked them how well they thought they listened, and they rated them individually. Each individual rated themselves really highly. And then a few minutes later, I asked them to rate everybody else around the room, and the ratings dropped. So there was a difference between self view and then team view. And so we're trying to get teams to really understand and how to communicate with one another well. So I'm curious to work with people who want more out of their working life for themselves and for their teams.
They really want something else.
Yeah,
Yeah. Have
yeah.
you've not done it a long time, but I'm just curious. Have you ever fired a client
Um,
or come close?
I've taken clients to supervision. So, if you're a coach, you have European Mentoring Coaching Council's International Coaching Federation guidelines say you should have a supervisor to take stuff to the supervisor where you think you're doing, where you've got blockers in your own performance. So, you know, with clients where I'm struggling to feel that I'm offering value, then I'll take that to supervision. And supervision is amazing because they help me look at things through different lenses and different perspectives. So I haven't ever fired a client. I've felt during a session that I wasn't helping a client and that maybe I wasn't the right coach.
Okay.
But by going through supervision, it's enabled me to look at different ways to work with that client.
Well, perhaps you're just more discriminating and discerning at the front end. You can see the train wreck coming when it's coming.
Yeah. But what's interesting, Larry, is I was doing some coaching with a group of high potential leaders, and it's a real reminder not to judge people on first impressions, because there was one person, and I had a coaching session with them. I was thinking, oh, this is going to be painful. I don't know if I can do this with this person. Very fixed mindset. or it appeared very fixed mindset. Spoke to another person, and I was like, wow, this is going to be great. Can't wait to coach this person. By the end of the series of coaching sessions, the person who I thought had had a fixed mindset had grown so much as a leader. It still makes me tingle now to think about
There you go.
it. And the person who hadn't, who I was looking forward to coaching, had sort of stuck in that same sort of position of, I don't feel that they'd grown or got as much out of it. Now, for me, I have to take that to supervision to say, well, why is that? Was that because I transferred something from myself on, projected onto them, which then limited that person's growth? Or what was it that, what did I do well there? So I did that as well. So I took that to supervision. So you can never judge a book by its cover, is what I would say in coaching.
It's true.
And I like a challenge anyway.
All right. Okay. Well, we've covered a lot of ground. I like this.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we haven't that you'd like to, or anything you'd like to say?
um, I think the only thing I'd say is we are where we are right now. I am here with all my self-limiting beliefs that I may have. You're there. We're as good as we can be today. So let's not worry about being the best. Let's just say we are the best today. Tomorrow's a new day. Let's be kind to ourselves. But I'm really curious of how I can get better. And I'm willing to learn, and I look forward to it. And I will stay accountable for the things that I say I want to do. But knowing that if you do it alone, everybody knows that to try and develop a new habit, say not eating chocolate, for example, it's extremely difficult if it's just in your own head that you've made that choice. But once you start to tell people your goals, tell people why, be accountable, then you're more likely to do those life-changing habits. And we're not talking about, you don't necessarily have to change we're not talking about changing people's personalities. We're talking about little shifts in behavior that can help you be a great leader.
Okay. All right. This was delightful. I enjoyed
Oh no, thank you. You're always a pleasure to talk to, Larry.
it. Likewise. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in and listening to Barbara and I have a wonderful and delightful conversation. I want to thank you, Barbara, for taking your time to do this.
Nice. The time has flown, and thank you for having me on the show. Really pleased that I can help out.
It's my pleasure. Tune in again for the next episode when we have another really interesting person. I love interviewing interesting people. Thanks for tuning in.